I guess just as you went back and assessed the 2025 defense, I guess what kind of stood out?
You know, the jump from 24 to 25, our ability as an entire unit to really adhere to what we wanted as a staff from our standard standpoint, from just the effort, the fundamentals, the technique, our ability to just pre-snap, communicate, get a line correctly on any given snap, and then ultimately all 11 guys doing their job on any given snap. And that's something that we were preaching all the way back first meeting of January, and to see that to come to fruition a majority of the year through the season was fun to see. What we are now striving for is to take the next step, which in our mind is to continuously do the same things we just hit on as far as the standards don't slip. We actually have to raise the bar even more from each one of those things I just hit on, as far as our effort has to go even higher. Our ability to execute our fundamentals and technique have to be even more on point on a consistent basis. Our ability to win the pre-snap from a communication standpoint, and then when the ball is snapped, all 11 guys doing their job every single snap for 4 quarters. And then what we're going to add this year a little bit more of that there was times, but we want to attack the ball more. We want to make sure that we score, get the ball back to our offense so they in turn can score. And ultimately we feel like we're going to help change the results as far as the scoreboard at the end of the day. But it's a one day at a time process.
I guess when you look at all these newcomers coming in, but you have had 2 years of culture now in the standard, I guess, is it easier to instill even though the players are quite a bit different?
Yeah, it is. It really, to be honest, that's such a big part of this thing, is to make sure that culture is in place first. And I think as a staff and Coach Choate leading the way in that regard of really establishing our culture within this building and within that locker room. And so in turn, no matter who's sitting in those chairs on any given meeting on that first part of January, those guys know what is expected from the standpoint of the culture and what we want on not just on the field, but more importantly, how we just approach every single day.
Well, there are a lot of newcomers. Dylan obviously came back and he was a first-team all-conference player. What was the recruitment process in trying to keep him as kind of an anchor of this defense?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Dylan is a guy that he wanted to be here. And that's the type of guys that we want, are guys that really buy into everything that we're preaching from a standpoint of development, not only as a player, but more importantly as a person. Buying into the culture that we just referred to is from the standpoint of within these buildings, we are going to help you become a better man. We're going to help you really strive to make sure that you're being the best version of yourself every single day. And ultimately, you're going to get results on the field. Dylan's a prime example of a guy that's seeing the results on the field and knows and understands that the job's not finished here. And he wants to make sure that he attacks this thing again this year and really establishes himself as a guy that's going to leave a legacy for a long time of what it is to be a Wolfpack defensive player.
What was most impressive about the season he just had, and where are the biggest areas he can improve?
Yeah, the most impressive thing to me is just down after down, the effort and the physicality that he plays with. That to me is what makes him so different than every other player, not only within obviously on our team at this point, but just as you look across the conference and across the country. That's why he got the results that he did, is because down after down and really day after day, how he attacks everything, every single rep, whether it was spring ball today, practice 3, or if it's game 3 within our non-conference schedule, or game 11 or 12 as we get to the latter part of the season, it's the same Dylan every single day. And that consistency is why he gets the results that he does.
You mentioned the takeaways. I mean, was that disappointing last year? You guys were solid, but maybe didn't have the kind of splash plays that every DC would.
Yeah, exactly right. I felt like, I think it was 15 takeaways. We scored a couple of touchdowns. But at the end of the day, for us defensively, it's still about wins and losses, no different than any other team. That's what everything comes back to, is what did we do to help our entire team win? And if we don't get the W at the end of the day, we got to go back to the drawing board and figure out how as a defense can we help us do that. And so I felt like for us, a big part of it is us attacking the football, whether the ball's in the air and we go attack it in the air. If that ball's in the ball carrier's hands or in the quarterback's hands, we're trying to get to the ball with great leverage and great intent as far as how we attack that football. To in turn, let's get our offense the ball as many times as we can and get them into position from a field position standpoint that they can score some points. And then ultimately, if we can put points on the board like we did against Sac State or San Jose State, that always helps you win games at the end of the day.
You guys have a goal, like individually, how many turnovers?
There's nothing that we've pinpointed like, hey, we want to get to this number. In my mind, it's if we just every single day, if the process is right and we do the things within practice now over the course of however many practices leading into the season, we're going to create habits that in turn is going to get the results that we want. If we pinpoint a goal up there and go, we got to go get this every day, we got to go with this, and then we say we don't get that in any given practice, so the guys can be like, well, what are we doing? All right, so in turn, it's just, it's more process-oriented as far as, all right, fundamentally speaking, this is how we attack the ball. Every single day, this is what we're going to do. And then ultimately, we create those permanent habits that are going to show up in the moments that we need them the most.
I guess, how do you coach takeaways? Because maybe if you hunt them too much, then you're giving up big plays. I guess
that's exactly right.
Change what you've done in practice? Or I guess, how do you emphasize it without the downside?
Yeah, no, and that's I think every defense coordinator and head coach across the country is trying to figure out that same thing. And so I've been in this thing long enough to have seen all sorts of different ways to approach it. And I think, like I just said, as far as how we do it is going to be more process-oriented, actually teaching them how exactly when we're coming in and we're trying to punch the ball, let's give them the smallest of details of how we're punching at that ball. Get that elbow up, make sure that fist is coming down on the ball, make sure it's that leverage hand and not just reaching across to where in turn now all of a sudden I'm missing tackles and now it turns into an explosive play. So we're really trying to pinpoint small little details that we can continuously teach and coach our guys. And now in turn, again, we create those small habits that now all of a sudden show up in the fourth quarter. We get a strip sack, fumble, and scoop and score. And that may potentially be the difference in that game.
Looking at the back seven, pretty rebuilt from a roster standpoint. I guess what were you guys looking for? I guess what do you feel like you guys were able to get out of the portal?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately we lost some production there, Merv and Hayden and AJ and Ed. I mean, just go down the list of guys, Case and Kinchin. I mean, there's just a lot of experience. So when you lose that much experience, you got to go get some experience. I mean, you got to find some guys that have played some football somewhere and have some college football experience, and then mix them in with the guys that we have within the system or within this program, some of the younger guys that we recruited from high school that are now starting to become older guys and that have an idea of the standard and the culture that we're creating here. So now you've got a good mix in that room of guys that have played somewhere else, so they have the experience. They mix in with guys that know what we want from our standards and standpoint, and then you add in those measurables. So, all right, we got to get some length. We got to get a little bit of speed, because those two things in the back end attribute-wise really help you from a ball hawk and things of that nature. And so we tried to mix all that into what now is essentially a new-looking room, but there's a good mix of new and guys that have been here and know what the standard and the culture is.
Has it been hard to be patient with this rebuild? I know you guys wanted maybe more wins earlier. I guess what's kept you guys pushing forward, and what makes you optimistic that this is the breakthrough season?
You know, I think ultimately everybody wants that instant gratification. That's just the world today, right? You look at the phone, you're instantly trying to find, all right, what am I looking for? You're trying to Google, Chat GPT, all this thing for those instantaneous answers. So in turn, that's just the world we live in. This is different. I understand that the transfer portal, hey, this is supposed to be the answer, but as we've hit on multiple times over the course of our talk, culture's got to be established first. And that was such a big part of these first 2 years, going from 1 to year 2, and now going to year 3. We feel very confident from a standpoint of what we have in this building. The culture, the behaviors are now up to the standards that we are trying to set. And ultimately, we're going to end up seeing the results from a scoreboard standpoint as we continue to progress down this path.
I mean, you as the DC probably have a lot of insight into a new OC stepping in. I guess what has impressed you about what Brett has brought this offense and what he's trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I really like just his command of this offense, this scheme. He really knows this scheme inside and out and has a great command of the room from a staff standpoint, and in turn has been able to vocalize to the team and to the offense exactly what his vision is from an offensive standpoint, and ultimately I think that's going to end up getting some of the results that we all want from a standpoint of the team. And it's fun for us defensively because of just a different style of play and some different things that we'll see that we then in turn have to prepare for every single day, which in turn should help us as far as some of our conference opponents that we'll see as well.
Over these next couple of weeks, what are just a couple goals maybe in particular that you have for your side?
Yeah. So we've got 3 things that we talked about as a defensive staff that we want to kind of get done over the course of these 15 practices. Number 1, identify exactly who we have from a personnel standpoint, from a playmaker standpoint, from a communicator, just all these different things that we need to make sure we know and understand about our personnel. The second piece is make sure that our identity of who we want to be defensively is really instilled in these guys. Talked about the effort, the fundamentals, the technique, the ability to win the pre-snap, our ability to do our job, and then attacking the ball. Those 4 things, if we can instill that in this group over the course of 15 practices, that's going to give us a leg up when we get in the fall ball. And then in the last piece is, all right, now that we've established that, let's make sure our DNA from a scheme standpoint, our guys have a great mastery of that at the end of 15 practices.
Linebackers as well, you guys guys had a couple guys who had left.
Yeah.
Just if you could talk a little bit about that group and
Yeah.
how they're starting to kind of take shape.
Yeah, yeah, very, very similar to the back end where you lose a lot of experience and some really good players that did some really good things for us. So you got to replace those guys from an experience standpoint. So I felt like we really did a good job of that, of finding guys that have some experience. Being able to get EJ back, I think, was a big thing for us just from a leadership standpoint, experience standpoint. And he's really shown that over the course of these first couple of practices of just his now being in the system 2 years, how much faster he's playing because of that. And then the guys that we've kind of surrounded him with was from a younger standpoint, whether it was our recruiting class, high school wise, that have kind of now had a year in the program and now have got some expectations for them, or the guys that we brought in that have some really good athletic ability traits and some really good football instincts and some physicality. I mean, those guys today we put the shells on for the first time and you got to go, whoa, okay, guys, we had take it down a notch. This is day 3. That's a good thing, though. You want to do that as opposed to the other where you're like, all right, do we have any bite in us at all? These guys got plenty of bite. So now it's just a matter of making sure they're biting the right spots and not just biting the bite.
How much more comfortable do you feel just in your role now here as you enter into spring ball in year 3?
Yeah, and it, like the biggest thing for me is our staff continuity. That's awesome. And I've got this defensive staff is awesome to work with on a day-to-day basis. And now that we're going into year 3, and we all speak the same language, we're all on the same page as far as what we're trying to implement and instill in these guys from a culture and standard standpoint, defensively speaking. And in turn, I'm very confident in each one of those position rooms, those guys are getting the message. And in turn, they're going out there and playing the way that we all want our guys to play.
How would you just assess your first year at the FBS last year?
I would say it was a big improvement from the JUCO level. It's a lot of stuff you need to learn. It's a lot of stuff that I didn't even know I needed to learn from there. So I would say it's just a big jump coming from JUCO to the FBS level.
What do you think you learned the most about playing at this level and just yourself as a linebacker?
I think patience is the most important thing I learned throughout this whole process. You know, coming in JUCO, you see a lane, you go through it, but in here you got other people doing other jobs and you got to read off them. So patience is one of the most important things I say I learned.
Got off to a really good start, then had an injury. I guess, just patience off the field and how to deal with that. How did you process it?
It was pretty tough because, like me, I've never been really hurt. I never really sat out a game in my life. So it was pretty hard on me. I was just talking to my mom, talking to friends from back home. They were keeping me calm throughout the whole process.
Learn anything by watching from the sidelines as opposed to the field?
Oh, yeah.
What you take out of
For sure, learn a lot. You learn a lot about the backhand and the front seven more. You learn what the D-line's doing, how they got to go upfield to stop the run. It's just the little things. It's a lot of little things that you learn.
Entering this year, I guess, what are the biggest areas you feel like you need to improve to continue to be a better player?
I say just in the box, I just need to improve. I feel like a little bit more, just reading the run a little faster, reading run pass, RPO game, one thing I need to improve on.
So Austin leaves, Stone leave, you're kind of like the last soldier.
Yeah.
What is your role in terms of leading that group and making sure everyone's on the same page?
Just making sure all the new guys are comfortable, just making sure everybody's fitting in, everybody's together, everybody feels included.
Do you feel like more of a leader of the group? And I guess, Coach Ioane was just kind of talking about how he sees that in you.
Yeah, I know last year, I was the young guy in the group, everybody was leading me, but this year it feels totally different, having these new guys. And these new guys have been embracing it, like they've been a part of the challenge and they've been wanting to work.
One of the things we talked with Coach Ioane about is creating more takeaways. I guess you're pretty good at that.
Yeah.
But I guess, what is the goal or the keys to being better at taking that ball?
Just attacking the ball at all costs. If you're the second man in, make sure you're punching it. If it's tipped off, make sure you're running to the ball so you can get that pick.
With a kind of a new back seven as well, how are you kind of trying to mentor that group? I guess who's kind of stuck out to you among the transfers in?
I want to say Selman, Jay Scott. Those are two guys that I say excel. They want to get better every day. They want to be here. So I feel like that's the first step in improving.
We did see a number of good players come back. Dylan was one of those. I guess, what did that mean to the defense to see the all-conference defensive end, return to the team?
It meant a lot. I mean, he was our leader of the defense last year, so it meant a lot for him to come back and for him to just be around the guys.
Can you sense the hunger from you and the returners, of how hungry just this group is just to put the pads back on and just to play a game already again and to try and get some more wins?
Yeah, we're for sure hungry. 3 wins last year wasn't enough. 3 wins the year before that wasn't enough for us. So we just want to go out there and show what we can really do.
What do you think would be a successful spring camp in your eyes?
Just everybody getting the defense down perfectly, offensively, getting the scheme down right because they got a new OC over there. So I just say just getting the basics down packed is the most important thing right now in this spring ball.
And you guys are seeing a new look offense. So I guess could you describe what that's kind of been like now as you guys do have a new OC this year going up against that? this year?
Yeah, it's a lot more creativity coming from the offense. We're seeing a lot of different things in the same type formations. So I see that's really like the newest thing I've seen coming from the offense.
We've heard the name Jake Silverman quite a bit over the last 18 months. I guess what can you tell us about him and maybe his readiness to play a lot this year?
Jake's a grinder. Jake's a young dude, came in late last year in June, and he showed up from the first day he came. In the spring ball game, he had a pick 6, and Jake's just getting better every day.
You see your role changing at all in terms of like more off ball versus like in the middle of the box?
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot more mixed this year. I feel like I was a lot off ball last year, and this year I'll be really more like in the box, in ball, stopping the run game.
You have individual goals for 2026?
100 tackles, I want to say 5 picks. Just really like 10 turnovers in general. That's my goal, is 100 tackles.
And you feel like that was the biggest, you guys were pretty good as a defense,
Yeah.
but the biggest area to improve being the takeaways, or are there other things maybe we're missing where you guys are like trying to hone in on?
I feel like last year we were good at being physical. I feel like takeaways is a big thing we need to improve even more off of last year. You know, we had Merv, we had me having had an interception, we had Ioane with some forced takeovers, but I feel like everybody as a whole needs to get in there and start punching that ball out.
New Mountain West, I guess, I'm sure you've seen the
Yeah.
schedule, some new locations.
Yeah.
I guess what excites you about the slate of games you guys are going to play?
Honestly, just the new teams, just the new people, new places to go. I've never been to North Dakota or Northern Illinois, so it's just the new places that you're traveling. It's the experience for real.
And what's it going to take for you guys to end up on the top of the Mountain West by the end of the year?
Just us being together and us being a full team.